all over it now, and a higher state of alert from coast to coast, trying to be prepared without causing panic.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everyone. The United States is bombing Afghanistan again today, and much of the world is trying to digest where this will lead in the struggle against terrorism. The Pentagon says it hasn't yet figured out how successful it was yesterday, doing damage to the Taliban government or Osama Bin Laden's assets in Afghanistan. We're going to begin at the Pentagon tonight with ABC's John McCarthy. John?
Peter, U.S. sources tell ABC News that the Pentagon plans to bomb Afghanistan for just 3 days and then to pause and see what happens. A fourth and fifth day could be added if certain targets need to be bombed again.
Already a smaller force is in the air tonight, fewer than half the aircraft going after similar targets: air defense, radar, Taliban tanks. Military officials concede they may already be running out of targets that are worth dropping bombs on. Part of the strategy is psychological. Pentagon sources say that is why the U.S. bombed the homes of Osama Bin Laden and Taliban leader Mullah Omar, not because they were expected to be there, but so they would know the U.S. had been and could come again. For much the same reason, the U.S. carpet-bombed several terrorist training camps, even though intelligence indicated they were all but empty.
The cruise missiles and bombers are not going to solve this problem. We know that. What they can do is to contribute by adding pressure.
The Taliban claims about 20 civilians were killed, a claim as yet unconfirmed.
We are taking great pains, and sometimes we put ourselves at even greater risk in order to make every effort to avoid civilian casualties.
Though U.S. pilots report they are being shot at, the Taliban's air defenses have thus far proved to be no match.
It's like sitting in a tree and having kids shoot bottle rockets up at you.
In the other part of the operation, 2 more cargo planes are scheduled to drop food and medicine to isolated areas of Afghanistan, just as they did last night. The bombing campaign has stopped delivery of food by road, leaving an estimated 4 million people already in desperate need in even worse shape.
It is quite true that 37,000 rations in a day do not feed millions of human beings. On the other hand, if you were one of the starving people who got one of the rations, you'd be appreciative.
As the U.S. continues to squeeze, military sources say the plan is to see if the Taliban can hold on to power and to see if Osama bin Laden and those around him make some move and to plan the next step for the U.S. accordingly. Peter?
Thank you, John. John McCarthy at the Pentagon. One other item about these food and medicine drops. They're not popular with everyone. The international relief organization Doctors Without Borders, which won the Nobel Peace Prize for relief work, described it today as military propaganda designed to justify the bombing. The Bush administration points out it also has committed $300 million in other aid. It's a question, ultimately, of getting it there. In Afghanistan, electricity to the capital Kabul was cut again tonight. The Taliban called the attacks a disgrace and dishonor to the Islamic world. It also said Osama bin Laden is still alive. The U.S. is trying to persuade people within the Taliban to switch sides. It is also actively supporting the Taliban's enemies. We go now to northern Afghanistan and ABC's David Wright. David?
Peter, the Iranian Air Force is reporting that the commander of the Taliban Air Force is among those killed in tonight's attacks. For the Northern Alliance, it's another night where they have experienced a victory without barely having to fire a shot. The soldiers of the Northern Alliance pounced on the opportunity presented by the U.S. attacks, moving quickly today to cut off supply routes to Taliban-controlled cities in the north and the west. We're working closely with the Americans, boasted one commander. We're ready to take Kabul at any time. But so far, the alliance has made no such moves on the Taliban strongholds to the south. Their army is largely composed of teenagers armed with Soviet-era weapons. The Taliban are believed to outnumber them by at least 2 to 1. The airstrikes have added to the flow of refugees. These people left Kabul today, and there are reports that some Taliban soldiers are among those fleeing. In the growing refugee camps of northern Afghanistan today, people were eager for news. Many have family in Kandahar, Kunduz, and other cities that have been hit. And while there appears to be widespread support for the U.S. military action, there is also concern about civilian casualties, for one. This man speaks for many when he says they should target bin Laden and the Taliban, not the ordinary Afghan people, not us. Some are also uncomfortable to see another superpower taking sides in an Afghan civil war, as the Soviet Union once did. The difference, says this Northern Alliance officer, is that when the Soviets attacked, they did not have the blessing of the international community. The Northern Alliance is now supremely confident. They say they've convinced 40 Taliban commanders at least to switch sides, and they now have a superpower on their side. Peter?
Thank you very much. Northern Afghanistan tonight.